Hello, Gene Schwimmer here. Welcome to today's vlog. First order of business before I get into today's subject is I just learned a few minutes ago that I have a new subscriber, CIT. It's a capital C and a small I and a small t, so I assume it's one word, sit. And sit and not kit, because if it were kit, then I would imagine that it would start with a K. But maybe I'm wrong. But right or wrong, CIT, sit. Thanks for subscribing. Welcome to the family. I hope you'll bring many more subscribers along with you, and I hope you'll enjoy these vlogs going forward. Oh, and if I missed anybody in the past, either I miss or I don't always get a notification when somebody subscribes. So if I left anybody out, everybody who is kind enough to subscribe to my channel, my vlog, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot for subscribing. Now, what I want to do today is I want to reply to a commenter, but before I do that, I just want to repeat what I've said in past vlogs, that I generally leave commenters alone. I have this vlog to give my opinion, and I can talk as long as I want to. So if somebody wants to agree with me or disagree with me, especially disagree with me in the comments, I generally don't reply. The only time I do, and this is going to be one of those times, is either to clarify a point or to correct a mistaken impression, or if somebody raises an interesting point that I want to expand on. That's pretty much what happened today. The comment is from Katie, who I assume is, well, it's a transsexual, and Katie is replying to a vlog I did 1 or 2 days ago, but it was about a topic that I had also talked about in a much earlier vlog about men who identify as women participating in women's sports and winning all the prizes because they are putting the women at an unfair disadvantage. I suggested in this last vlog a solution, which is to, if you want to identify as a woman and you want to dress as a woman, that's fine, you go ahead. But for sports, that there should be a separate division created for transsexuals, for men who identify as women, and another division for women who identify as men. But I especially am talking about men who identify as women, because you're not seeing women, as I said in my preceding vlog, you're not seeing women who identify as men clamoring to participate in men's sports, obviously, because they would lose. They might not even qualify to enter whatever the contest is. But if you turn it around the other way and you have men competing with women, you obviously give the men identifying as women a tremendous advantage. In fact, you have high school girls competing in women's sports, and they say that when a man, well, you can go onto YouTube and you can see some of these races. It's mostly in track where you see the men identifying as women winning the races, and the girls, teenagers, practically in tears. They say, why should we train? Why should we practice? We know going in that we will never win, that we have no chance of winning no matter how hard we train. This is the point I'm going to get to. I'm going to read the comment in a section. No matter how poor the men are as athletes. And this is what I'm talking about. Let me read the comment and then I'll explain. And by the way, Katie, thanks for writing. It's not personal. I appreciate your taking the trouble to write, but I see some problems with your argument, regardless of whether I agree with it, and I think you may have misunderstood what I meant. So let me read you the comment, and I'm going to read it verbatim. There's a little syntax problem here, but I'm just going to read it the way it is. What the transphobes don't tell you is that all of us trans folks are at different stages of transitions. Though, Gene, Being a trans girl who is notoriously rubbish at sport and always the last to be picked on a team, I find this sudden idea that we all have superhuman abilities at sport absolutely hilarious. Seriously, if I could beat Martina Navratilova at tennis, I wouldn't be here today in the typing pool, LOL. First of all, I want to talk about this LOL because that tells me right away that Katie is a liberal, because liberals are the ones who do this almost always. I won't say there's never an occasion when conservatives do this, but you see it time and time again with liberals that they ridicule people who disagree with them. Whatever argument you are making, Katie, the LOL at the end, you can look at anything I've said in any of my vlogs. I don't know how long you've been watching my vlogs, but I'm always respectful, as I am to you, to people who disagree with me. I would never say LOL. I just never would insult you. It just takes away from your argument. So I would hope that in the future you would just be respectful to people with whom you disagree. That's how you have a civilized conversation today. Otherwise, why talk to each other? Or how can you talk to each other if we're just going to yell at each other and just insult each other? So going on from that point, I want to address this one phrase here, this sudden idea that we all have superhuman abilities at sport. Absolutely hilarious. Well, that's not what I'm saying. In fact, I am saying precisely the opposite. You can suck at a sport. You can suck so badly at a sport as a male that you can just go and compete as a woman and you can walk away with first prize. In fact, there was one race I read about where there were two men identifying as women and they took first and second place. And the girls were saying, as I said, why should we even enter? We know that we are going to lose once we know that there is a male in the race. And we're not talking about somebody who is superhuman. We are talking about somebody who, if they were competing in a men's division, would absolutely suck. And it's interesting that Katie uses as an example tennis. If I could beat Martina Navratilova at tennis, I wouldn't be here today in the typing pool. Well, it's apropos and a nice coincidence that you mentioned tennis, because that is a perfect example of what I am talking about, and here is why. John McEnroe, retired tennis player, was one of the greatest tennis players ever. #1 ranked. So he knows what he's talking about when he talks about tennis. He wrote a biography some years ago. He was interviewed about that biography. Let's see what he said. Here's the headline. John McEnroe, Serena Williams, world's best female tennis player, but would rank, quote, like 700, unquote, among men. And by the way, obviously this article is from some years back when McEnroe's book came out. So he's talking about Serena Williams, but obviously this is when she was in her heyday and actively competing. Retired tennis great John McEnroe describes Serena Williams as the best female tennis player in the world in his new memoir, quote, but seriously, unquote. But during a Sunday interview with NPR's Lulu Garcia-Navarro, the 7-time major singles champion suggested Williams wouldn't stand a chance if she competed on the men's circuit. Quote, some wouldn't qualify it. Some would say she's the best player in the world, unquote. Garcia-Navarro challenged McEnroe on the subject of Williams, whose 23 Grand Slam singles titles are the most in the Open era since 1968. Quote, why qualify it, unquote. Quote, oh, unquote, McEnroe replied. Quote, she's not, you mean the best player in the world, period, unquote. Quote, yeah, the best tennis player in the world, unquote, Garcia-Navarro said. Quote, you know, why say female player, unquote. Quote, well, because if she played the men's circuit, she'd be like 700 in the world, unquote, McEnroe said. And this gets to my point, the point I was actually making that Katie seems to have missed. John McEnroe knows a thing or two about tennis. He says that Serena Williams, the number one at the time that he did this interview, the number one ranked female tennis player in the world, if she were competing in the men's circuit, she would rank around 700. So let's just use his 700 number, and let's go to what Katie says in his, because you're a man, Katie, I'm sorry, you're a man. Which brings me to the last sentence of Katie's comment. Seriously, if I could beat Martina Navratilova at tennis, I wouldn't be here today in the typing pool. Well, I don't know your tennis ability, Katie, but if you're a male, the question is, are you the 700th worst tennis player in the world? Because if you are so bad that you are, well, if you are worse than the 700th worst male tennis player in the world, then you're right. You could not beat Martina Navratilova or Serena Williams for that matter. If you were number 700, if you were the, never mind superhuman, if you were the 700th worst male tennis player in the world, you could compete to a draw with Serena Williams, at one time the best female tennis player. And if you're 699, the 699th worst male tennis player in the world, someone who could not get within spitting distance of Wimbledon, if you competed as a woman, you could beat Martina Navratilova, you could beat Serena Williams, you could be the number one female tennis player in the world. And that is my point. It's nothing to do with being superhuman. It's being a terrible male athlete identifying as a female. Just say, I'm a female now, and competing with the women and just walking away with the prize. And you don't have to be just number two. If you're the number two tennis player and you feel bad, go enter the women's division and you could win. You could just suck terribly. You could be number 699 and you could win. And I want to now just finally end with this other point, which has to do with, well, it's related to this LOL at the end. I'm going to read something here because I want to address this term transphobe, because there is nothing transphobic in what I said. What I say about a separate division for transsexuals, that's no different than in boxing. You don't put, well, you have the lightweight division, you have the welterweight division, you have the heavyweight division, you have the super heavyweight division. You don't put the lightweight up against the heavyweight. It's not fair. There's a physical disparity there that means that the heavyweight would win every time against the lightweight. The odds are just stacked in the heavyweight's favor. This is the same thing. You're a male, you have greater physical strength. It's not fair to put you in a division with women. And since we're talking about lightweights and heavyweights, let's talk about mixed martial arts. You ever see how brutal those mixed martial arts contests are? So why don't we take a male identifying as a woman and put him in the ring with a female and let them fight it out and let her get beaten to a pulp? Would that make you happy, Katie? Would that satisfy your sense of fairness? And this brings me now to the last point about transphobia. I'm going to quote now from an article quoting a trans woman, okay? A trans woman who is somebody like Katie. And here is the, well, let me start with the headline. Quote, "Trans women are male," unquote, writes trans woman. Debbie Hayton is a British science teacher and a transgender campaigner. Hayton, who struggles with gender dysphoria, identifies as a trans woman but still acknowledges that trans women are men. Denying this fact, Hayton argues, is harmful to transgender people since society is unlikely to build trust and respect with a minority group if said group coerces them into denying science and safeguarding provisions. Live and let live is a two-way street. Hayton's common sense perspective on trans issues is not only refreshing but desperately needed. And it is. And that is a little bone that I have to pick with Katie, that men who want to identify as women need to, well, first of all, as this trans woman says, you are a man. If you have an X and a Y chromosome, you are a man. Now, if you want to be treated as a woman, that is fine, but you have to respect, if you want me to respect your role playing, then you have to respect my statement that, well, and not just me, you have to respect fellow transsexuals like Debbie Hayton, who frankly says that, number one, trans women are men, number one. Number two, that you have dysphoria. You have a psychological malady called dysphoria. If you want to live with your dysphoria, that is fine. If you want me to humor you, that's fine. But if you want me to agree that there are multiple sexes, that there are more than two sexes, no, I'm sorry, I'm not. And you have to be tolerant of my difference of opinion. If you want me to call you Miss instead of Mr., then I will, if that makes you happy. But I don't have to subscribe to your belief that you are actually a woman because you choose to dress like one or to have cosmetic surgery. It's just intolerance on your part. So I hope that you will be more tolerant and not call people who disagree with you, number one, transphobe, and number two, if it's, in other words, we just have to agree to disagree, but however much we disagree, to be civil, agree with this trans woman that trans women are actually men. Don't call us transphobic. Don't say I hate you because I just recognize a scientific fact, which you may want to change, but you can't. You're going to have the same X and Y chromosomes that you were born with. You cannot change that. If you want cosmetic surgery, that's fine. If you want to dress as a woman, that's fine. But I think competing in women's sports and having an unfair physical advantage, I think that is not fine. But again, you are entitled to your opinion. I'm just stating mine, but I'm not going to argue with you. I would just finally say on the issue of tolerance that Debbie Hayton, when she says that she has gender dysphoria, there are people who have gender dysphoria who want to be cured, who do not want to transition, quote unquote transition, but they want to identify with their biological sex. So I would hope you would be tolerant of somebody who has gender dysphoria but wants to learn to be happy with being male. And that's it for today. Thanks for stopping by, and thanks again for your comment, Katie. I hope I wasn't too harsh on you. I hope you didn't take it personally. It's just a clarification that I thought had to be made, and you did get me to think about something, and you got me to look up John McEnroe. So thanks a lot again, and for everybody else, and well, Katie too, thumbs up if you like this video. Share it with anybody you think would also like the video. Got any comments? And maybe I'm going to get a few more than I usually get this time. We'll see what happens. But any comments you have, you can put them in the comment section below the video. That's a good place also for any questions you might have, suggestions for future topics. If you could subscribe, as Sit did, C-I-T, Sit, thanks again, Sit, for subscribing. I would love to get more subscribers, so subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. And finally come back and see me again. I look forward to seeing all of you again, and until I do see all of you again, bye.